A billionaire, Richard Walker, had everything: money, power, and success. But he lost the most important thing in his life: his daughter, Emily. After the death of his wife, he became so consumed with work that he couldn't see how much Emily needed him. One day, he found her in a small diner, cared for by a waitress named Sarah, who treated Emily with the kindness and love he had forgotten to give. Emily, blind from a young age, hadn't seen her father in months, and the pain was deep. But Richard vowed to change. In the weeks that followed, Richard stayed by Emily's side, learning to be a father again. He gave up his empire to spend each day with her, listening to her questions, learning Braille, and even encouraging her to play music. Emily's love for him grew as they started over, and soon, they found a small home, a fresh start. But then, something extraordinary happened. An anonymous donation of $5 million for childhood blindness research, made in Emily's name. The miracle wasn't just the money, it was the family they rebuilt, the love they found, and the second chance they gave each other. If you love these types of stories, then don't forget to comment down below from where you are watching. You can support us by liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel. The sun had barely risen when the rain began to fall, soft and steady, painting streaks across the windows of a small-town diner in Georgia. The roads were slick, the sidewalks empty, and the old neon sign that read, "Darla's Diner," buzzed faintly under the gray sky. Inside, the diner was warm but quiet. A few regulars sipped black coffee at the counter, eyes glued to the small TV mounted in the corner. The smell of bacon, eggs, and brewed coffee filled the air. At a booth near the back, tucked away by the window, sat a little girl. She couldn't see the rain, but she could hear it, every soft patter against the glass, every passing car sending up little splashes. She was about 8 years old. Her golden hair curled at the ends, tucked into the collar of a coat that looked too big for her. She wore worn shoes and had a small pink backpack beside her. Her pale blue eyes, although open, stared straight ahead without focus. She was blind. Her name was Emily. The waitress working that morning, a woman in her late 40s named Sarah, noticed her right away. Sarah had worked at the diner for years and had seen all kinds of people come and go. But Emily wasn't like most. She had started showing up about 2 weeks ago, always early, always alone. She never caused a scene. She just quietly took her seat at the same booth and waited. Sometimes she had a few dollars crumpled in her backpack. Sometimes not. But every time, she looked hopeful. Like she was expecting someone. Sarah had asked around, but nobody knew the girl. She wasn't local, that much was clear. Sarah couldn't stop thinking about her. Something about the way Emily's small hands would gently feel the edges of the table. The way she'd smile politely but never too wide. She didn't beg. She didn't whine. She just waited. On that rainy morning, Sarah walked over with a clean menu and a warm towel. She gently placed them on the table. "Good morning, sweetheart," she said softly. "Rough weather out there today." Emily turned her head toward the sound. "Is it still raining?" she asked. "Still coming down steady," Sarah replied, sitting down for a moment across from her. "You waiting for someone, honey?" Emily nodded, her small hands fidgeting with the hem of her coat. "My daddy said he might meet me here today. I come here so he knows where to find me." Sarah's heart sank. She didn't know what to say to that. She didn't know where Emily's daddy was, but something told her he wasn't coming. "I'll get you something warm," Sarah said gently, standing up. "You hungry?" Emily hesitated, then gave a quiet nod. "Yes, ma'am." Back in the kitchen, Sarah made her a bowl of fresh chicken noodle soup and added a small grilled cheese on the side. She didn't even punch it into the register. She wasn't worried about money right now. When she brought the tray back, Emily smiled gently. "It smells really good," she said, her fingers finding the spoon slowly. "Thank you, ma'am." "You're welcome, sweetheart," Sarah said, sitting nearby just in case the girl needed help. "Eat slow. It's hot. As Emily began to eat, Sarah watched her carefully. There was something deeply sad but also deeply strong about her. She didn't complain. She didn't ask for pity. She just kept going, one small spoonful at a time. Sarah couldn't help but wonder, where was this child's family? How could someone leave a blind little girl all by herself? But what Sarah didn't know was that someone was watching. From across the street, parked in a black SUV with tinted windows, a man sat completely still. He was wearing an expensive tailored suit. His face was tired, lined with guilt. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the steering wheel. His name was Richard. And he was Emily's father. He wasn't just any man. He was one of the richest in the state. A billionaire. His name was known in real estate circles from Atlanta to Chicago. He owned skyscrapers, resorts, and five-star hotels. People knew his name, respected it. Some even feared it. But in that moment, Richard felt smaller than he had ever felt in his life. He had tracked Emily down only a few days ago. It had taken private investigators, hours of phone calls, and a great deal of money. But none of that could prepare him for what he was seeing now. His blind daughter, eating alone in a small-town diner, being fed by a stranger. A waitress. A kind woman who didn't know her name but showed her more care in 5 minutes than he had in months. He hadn't meant for things to get like this. But after his wife passed, everything fell apart. He had tried to bury the pain in work, in business deals, in more zeros on his bank statements. He thought hiring people would be enough. He thought his wealth could fill the gaps. He was wrong. And now, here he was, watching the woman behind the counter treat his daughter like family. Watching his little girl wait patiently for a father who didn't deserve her trust. A lump formed in his throat as he watched Emily take another careful bite of soup. The way she smiled. The way she whispered, "Thank you," as Sarah refilled her glass of milk. Richard's eyes filled with tears. He had all the money in the world. But at that moment, he'd give it all away just to hear his daughter call him Daddy again. Richard didn't step out of the SUV right away. He sat there frozen, watching Emily through the window as she laughed at something the waitress said. It had been so long since he heard her laugh like that. So long since he saw her smile without fear, without sadness hiding behind it. The last time he truly spent a full day with her was months ago. He couldn't even remember what they did. Maybe a zoo visit. Or maybe it was just lunch between meetings. He had told himself he was doing his best. But deep down, he knew he hadn't even come close. After his wife died, everything changed. Emily was only 5 when cancer took her mother. The woman Richard had loved since college, the one who brought warmth to their cold mansion, was gone in what felt like an instant. At first, Richard tried to stay strong. He kept up his business, kept the staff paid, made sure the house ran like a machine. But he couldn't bring himself to face the grief at home. So, he escaped into his work. One business deal turned into 10. One city trip became 3 weeks away. He told himself Emily had the best nannies. That she was safe. That she didn't need to see him cry. But while he was signing deals in glass towers, Emily was sitting in her room alone. Quiet. Waiting. Slowly slipping away. The first nanny left after 6 months. She said the child cried too much at night and refused to eat with anyone but her father. Richard ignored it. The next one stayed even less. The third one called him during a board meeting, said Emily had run out of the house and no one could find her. Richard didn't even answer. He was too busy closing on a $2 million contract. By the time he returned home that evening, she was gone. The only thing left was a note. She doesn't need money. She needs a father. He tore up the paper in anger, but not at the message. At himself. He had failed her, and no amount of money could undo that. He didn't call the police. He didn't go public. He didn't want the headlines, "Billionaire father loses daughter." Instead, he hired the best private investigators. They found her 2 weeks later. A diner in Georgia. A kind waitress had been feeding her, protecting her, loving her. Now, as he watched them inside, something inside him broke. His daughter didn't even flinch when Sarah touched her hand. She trusted that woman, smiled at her, called her ma'am, with more tenderness than she had used for Richard in years. He thought of all the times he brushed her off, all the birthdays missed, the holidays shortened, the hugs ignored. He had been too proud to grieve, too proud to admit he was scared. And now, someone else had stepped in where he should have been. But the worst part wasn't just the guilt. It was the fear. Fear that maybe he had lost his little girl forever. That maybe Emily's heart had moved on. That maybe he had waited too long to fix things. The storm outside grew heavier. Thunder rumbled low across the sky. Inside the diner, Sarah gently tucked a napkin into Emily's collar as she laughed again. Richard's hands tightened around the steering wheel. His designer suit, his wealth, his name, none of it could fix what he had broken. Still, he knew he had to try. No matter how long it took, no matter how many walls he had to break down, he was going to be her father again. But first, he had to earn it. Richard finally stepped out of the SUV. The rain hit him in cold sheets, soaking his tailored coat within seconds. He didn't rush. He didn't run. He walked slowly across the street, each step heavier than the last. His heart beat hard in his chest, not from fear of the weather, but from fear of what he might see in his daughter's face when she realized he was standing there. Inside the diner, Sarah was clearing empty plates. Emily had finished most of her meal and was now sipping warm milk, her small hands wrapped tightly around the glass. She looked calm, at peace. Sarah noticed the tall man through the window just before the door opened. He looked out of place in his expensive clothes, but his face was tired, worn. Not someone passing through. Someone with a story. He stood in the doorway for a moment, dripping, eyes locked on the little girl at the booth. He didn't say a word. Sarah stepped toward him, wiping her hands on her apron. "Sir, can I help you?" she asked carefully. He looked at her, then at Emily, then back to Sarah. His voice was low, quiet. "She's my daughter." Sarah's eyes narrowed slightly, unsure. "Emily?" she asked. Richard nodded. "Yes. Emily Grace Walker." Sarah looked back at the girl, who was now facing in their direction but hadn't said a word. Richard took a slow step forward. "Emily," he said, voice cracking. "It's me. It's Daddy." Emily's fingers tightened around her glass. She didn't speak. Her head tilted slightly, like she was listening closer. Sarah gently stepped aside. "I didn't know you were coming," Emily said softly. Richard swallowed hard. I wasn't sure if I should. But I've been looking for you. Every day. I made a mistake, sweetheart. A big one." Emily sat still. Her lips pressed together. "You said you'd be back," she said after a pause. "You said you just had to go away for a few days." "I know," Richard whispered. "I told you that. And I didn't come back. I'm so sorry." Silence hung in the air. One of the old men at the counter glanced up from his coffee, but said nothing. Even the rain outside seemed to quiet. "I waited every day," Emily continued. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. "I waited in my room, then in the garden, then by the door. I waited so long I stopped hearing the staff around me. I couldn't tell if it was morning or night." Richard took another step closer, not daring to touch her yet. "I know, baby. I left you alone when you needed me most. I don't expect you to forgive me today. But I want to fix it. I want to be your dad again. The way your mom would have wanted me to be. Emily flinched at the mention of her mother. You stopped saying her name, she said. After she died, you never talked about her again. You just got busy. Richard dropped to his knees beside her seat. I was broken. I thought if I kept moving, if I kept building, I wouldn't feel the pain. But all I did was lose you. For a long time, neither spoke. Sarah stood nearby, hands folded, unsure whether to interrupt. Finally, Emily turned slightly toward where her father knelt. I like Miss Sarah, she said quietly. She brings me soup without asking. And she talks to me like I'm not invisible. Richard nodded. She's a good person. I'm grateful she found you. Emily placed her glass on the table. Her hand slowly reached toward the sound of his voice. Richard took it gently, both hands trembling. I don't know if I can trust you yet, she said. You don't have to, he whispered. Not yet. Just let me show you I mean it. For the first time in a long time, Emily didn't pull her hand away. Richard didn't let go of Emily's hand for a long time. Her fingers were so small in his, and yet they seemed to hold more strength than he remembered. He kept his voice low, careful not to overwhelm her, even though a storm was breaking loose inside him. The weight of the years he missed, the moments he couldn't get back, pressed down hard. But this, her hand in his, was a start. A small one, but a start. Sarah watched quietly from behind the counter, wiping down a tray that didn't need wiping. She had seen plenty of sad stories come through her diner. Single moms working 2 jobs, kids hungry but proud, old men nursing coffee through lonely afternoons. But this one pulled at her heart. There was something about how Emily sat so still, so calm, like she was afraid even this moment might disappear. And how that man, clearly powerful, clearly rich, looked like a child kneeling beside her. After a while, Sarah approached with a soft voice. Can I bring anything else? Maybe a slice of pie. Emily turned toward the sound. Do you have apple? Sarah smiled. Sure do. Warm, with cinnamon. You want ice cream with it? Emily nodded slowly. Yes, please. Richard glanced up. I'll pay for everything. And for the meals she's had the past few days. Sarah shook her head. It's not about the money. She needed kindness. That's all. He looked at her, stunned by the simplicity of her answer. For years, he had thrown money at every problem. Money fixed buildings. It fixed contracts. But it couldn't fix this. It couldn't bring back time. And Sarah reminded him of something he'd forgotten. Some things need heart, not a checkbook. When the pie arrived, Emily smiled as the warm scent filled the air. She ate slowly, carefully, savoring every bite. Richard sat across from her now, still soaking wet, but he didn't care. He just watched her. Every motion, every smile, felt like a second chance. He didn't say much. He didn't know what to say yet. Words felt too small for what he owed her. After the pie, Emily leaned back against the booth, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Will I have to go back to the big house? She asked. Richard hesitated. Only if you want to. Or we can stay nearby. Start somewhere small. Just you and me. I don't like the big house, she said quietly. It's too quiet. Too cold. He nodded. Then we'll find a warm place. Somewhere simple. With music and laughter. Wherever you feel safe. Emily tilted her head. Will Miss Sarah come visit? Sarah chuckled softly. Sweetheart, you're welcome here any time. And if your daddy lets me know where you are, I'll bake you a pie myself. Richard smiled for the first time. It wasn't his polished business smile. It was real. Honest. He pulled out his phone, the same phone that had stolen his attention for years, and handed it to Sarah. Please. Put your number in. I'd be honored if you stayed in her life. Sarah entered her number and handed it back. Don't blow this, she said quietly. She still loves you. Don't waste it. He nodded, no pride left to defend. As the rain eased outside, Richard helped Emily into her coat. She held his hand, not tightly, but willingly. And as they stepped outside into the damp morning air, she paused. Daddy. Yes, sweetheart. I want pancakes tomorrow. He laughed softly, the sound foreign to him. Then pancakes it is. They walked slowly down the sidewalk together. No chauffeur, no entourage, no business calls. Just a father and his daughter, side by side, under a soft gray sky. The next morning, Richard woke up before the sun. He'd checked them into a small inn just outside town. Nothing fancy. Wooden floors, floral curtains, the kind of place that smelled like fresh coffee and old books. Emily had fallen asleep almost instantly in the room next door, curled up in a bed much too big for her tiny frame. Richard had watched her for a long while, just listening to her breathe. The sound, so steady, brought tears to his eyes. He made a promise to himself that night. No more business first. No more missed birthdays. From now on, he would wake up every morning thinking only of one thing, being her dad. At 7 a.m., he knocked gently on her door. Emily, he called softly. Time for pancakes. There was silence, then the sound of small feet padding across the carpet. She opened the door slowly, still in her nightgown. Her hair was messy, and she rubbed her eyes. You remembered, she mumbled. He smiled. I told you I would. They walked to the diner together. Sarah was already inside, refilling coffee cups and wiping down tables. She spotted them through the window and smiled warmly. Well, look who's back, she called as they entered. Emily grinned. I came for the pancakes. Sarah laughed. Coming right up, sweetheart. And extra syrup, just like yesterday. They sat at the same booth. This time, Emily sat beside her father instead of across from him. Richard helped her with the utensils, but she insisted on pouring the syrup herself. A small mess ended up on the table, but neither of them cared. They just laughed. As they ate, Sarah came over with a fresh pot of coffee. So, she said, eyeing Richard, what's the plan? He looked up. We're going to take it slow. Maybe stay in town for a while. I want her to feel grounded. Safe. Sarah nodded. Good. She needs consistency. Not just promises. I know, he said quietly. I'm not going anywhere this time. After breakfast, they took a walk through the small town. Emily held his hand and asked questions about everything they passed. What's that building? Why does that man wear a funny hat? Do birds sleep when it rains? Richard answered every question with patience, even when he didn't know the answer. They stopped at a bookstore, then a small music shop. Emily wandered in, drawn by the soft sound of a piano playing in the back. A young boy was practicing. She stood near the bench, listening quietly. I used to play piano, she whispered. You did? Richard asked. Before Mommy got sick, she said. Richard's heart tightened. Would you like to play again? She shrugged. Maybe. One day. He smiled. Then one day, we will. That afternoon, they returned to the inn. Emily sat on the bed with a new Braille book they picked up from a donation shelf in the bookstore. Richard sat nearby, reading aloud the first few pages as she followed along with her fingers. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. When she fell asleep again that evening, Richard stepped outside. Sarah was sitting on the steps, sipping tea. She's special, she said. I know, he replied. You got lucky. Not every child gives second chances. I don't deserve it, Richard admitted. No, Sarah said. But if you work hard enough, You just might earn it. He nodded, watching the stars appear above the quiet town. For the first time in years, he felt something return. Hope. He couldn't undo the past, but maybe, just maybe, he could build something new. And for the first time in a long while, Richard Walker believed in miracles. 3 weeks passed, and Richard never left Emily's side. He cancelled board meetings, handed over projects, and even left his private jet unused. The only schedule he followed now was hers: morning pancakes, afternoon walks, and bedtime stories. The once high-powered CEO now spent his days tying shoelaces and learning Braille. He had never been happier. The town began to notice. People had whispered at first, was that the billionaire who once made national headlines? But now, they just smiled when they saw him walk down Main Street with his little girl, holding her hand like it was his lifeline. Because it was. Sarah remained close. She came by the inn often, sometimes with pie, sometimes just to chat. Emily adored her, and Richard was grateful beyond words. Sarah had become more than just a waitress. She was the thread that had stitched his broken life back together. One afternoon, Sarah showed up with something wrapped in brown paper. "Thought she might like this," she said, handing it to Richard. He opened it carefully. Inside was a small, portable keyboard. "Her fingers are ready," Sarah said with a smile. That night, Richard placed the keyboard in front of Emily and watched her touch the keys gently. She pressed one, then another. The notes were soft, uneven. But then something happened. She found a rhythm. A simple tune, hesitant but beautiful. Her face lit up, and Richard felt a lump rise in his throat. "I remember this song," she whispered. "Mom used to sing it." He knelt beside her. "Then play it for her, sweetheart." Emily closed her eyes and continued. The room filled with the sound of her tiny fingers creating music, and for a moment, it was as if her mother was there with them, listening from heaven. The next morning, Richard took Emily to the edge of town. A small white house with a front porch had gone up for sale. Nothing grand. Just 2 bedrooms, a yard, and a view of the trees. Emily stood in front of it, her face tilted toward the sun. "It smells like flowers," she said. "There's a garden in the back," Richard replied. "Would you like to live here?" She turned toward his voice. "Will it have music?" "Always," he promised. He bought the house that day, and within a week, they moved in. Sarah came by every evening to help unpack and bring homemade meals. Neighbors dropped off welcome gifts, blankets, pies, even a small swing for the front tree. One evening, just as the sun dipped behind the trees, Emily sat on the porch, the keyboard on her lap. She played that same song again, the one her mother used to sing, and the notes floated out into the quiet street. That's when it happened. A black car pulled up to the curb. It was unfamiliar. A man in a suit stepped out and approached slowly. Richard stood up, confused but calm. "Mr. Walker?" the man asked. "Yes." The man handed him an envelope. "I'm from the Children's Health Foundation. Someone anonymously donated $5 million in your daughter's name. For research in childhood blindness. Full funding. No strings attached." Richard opened the envelope, stunned. Inside was a letter. No signature. Just one line. "She opened my eyes. May she help others open theirs." He looked down at Emily, who had stopped playing and now turned her head toward the sound of his breath. "What is it, Daddy?" she asked. He knelt beside her, emotion thick in his voice. "It's a miracle, baby. You made a miracle happen." Emily smiled, pressing a single note on the keyboard. "Then let's keep playing." And as the stars came out that night over the little white house, a father and daughter sat side by side, their hearts finally full. Proof that love, once lost, could be found again. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to check out more of our videos. We have plenty of inspiring and powerful stories waiting for you. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.